Laura Dant, and I am the PCA Region Focus Coordinator. Welcome to the Safety and Schroth Harness webinar presented by Mia Walsh, PCA National DE Chair, and special guest Joe Marko, founder of HMS Motorsports. Before we get started, I have a few things I would like to cover. This webinar is being recorded for future use for those who cannot attend. If you have a question, you can submit it via the questions pane towards the bottom right of your screen. If possible, we will address them on the call. Otherwise, we will follow up with you later with a resolution. With that, Joe and Mia, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for tonight's continuing professional education module for the HPDE leaders and instructors. I'd like to thank Laura Dant for hosting us today, and I'd like to say a big welcome to Joe Marko from HMS Motorsports, who is the Schroth importer of the belts and harnesses that we're going to be talking about today. And so we'll give a little intro about Joe, but I first, as always, like to thank our program sponsor, Pirelli. Pirelli gives a nice sponsorship fund to the HPDE program, which allows us to provide the national instructor training in the US, Canada, and our territories, as well as provide some of our instructor badges for the national instructor trainers that are going through our schools this year. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joe, and let's get started for tonight.
Very well. I imagine a few of you have heard of HMS or might even have heard of me. I've been doing it for 30 years, so you know, as you get older, people recognize you. I have retired from HMS effectively January 1st. I'm a consultant now for 2.5 days a month. I sold my shares into an employee ownership trust, one of the 60 employee ownership trusts in the U.S., because we have a very dedicated crew of 14 people that have most have been with me at least 10 to 14 years is the average. So we have a lot of experience there. You're always welcome to call HMS and ask advice on anything, or to stop by one of our stores either in Danvers, Massachusetts or in Mooresville. You're always welcome to bring your car by if you want somebody to look at it. It doesn't matter whether you're using our products or not. We're more than happy to give you an assessment of what it looks like or give you some suggestions on what you can do. At HMS, I pride myself in creating a company that's born in education. So I came out of the hotel business. I was in the hotel industry for 20 years before I started HMS at 43. And therefore I took the approach to motorsport, customer service, education. You know, if you treat the customer right and you teach them the right things, you'll eventually get the business, and it's proved out to be pretty good for us. We do a lot of work. Since 1999, we've been the U.S. importer for Schroth. Okay, it's not pronounced Schroth. Mm-hmm. It's German, and they don't pronounce H's, so it's actually Schroth, which rhymes with throat. And then Schubert helmets are not Schubert, they're Schubert. Rhyme, no, again, silent H at the end. So I end up dealing with all these German companies. My wife is German too, so it's good because I can write off the trips to Germany. Today, I want to talk about, a lot of safety issues. We'll spend some time on the Schroth ASM technology and belts, things that you might run into while you're at the track. Things that some are approved for use at Porsche events and some are not. And I kind of briefly will touch on those that are not, so you don't have to worry about those. We'll talk a little bit about frontal head restraints and what advantages, disadvantages, what works, how they might work with airbags, all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about rollovers and where injuries with rollovers come and some of the myths that are involving rollovers. And then I'll give you some basic guidelines on belt installation, regardless of whether it's one of our belts or anybody's belt. Installing a belt, it doesn't matter if you're a NASCAR, an IndyCar, World Rally, or an HPDE person, the belt geometry is identical. And so, what's there is there. I've got some QR codes at the end that you can click that will give you either a brief guideline of belt installation, or if you want to really delve into it, there's a 60-page guideline that Schroth produces of every little thing you might ever want to know. We'll talk a little bit about helmets and airbags, and then a little bit about our TRACOM communicator at the end. So without further ado, Schroth ASM technology. ASM stands for anti-submarining mechanism. And the anti-submarining mechanism is basically this thing you see right here. And this is called a rip stitch. So what it is it's a folded 2 inches of folded webbing that is stitched in a very particular way that, depending on what the load is that's generated in a crash, it will release a certain portion of that webbing up to the 2 inches to allow your upper torso to rotate slightly. In a car with a 3-point belt, you have a belt that's coming over your shoulder. Okay, and what happens in an impact is in an impact your body starts moving forward, but it ends up rotating because you're held back on one side. That rotation keeps the body on the rebound. So when you start moving in an impact, your body is going to come really far forward. You'll be able to, no matter how tight your belt is, I'll probably be able to drop a football or a basketball between my back and the seat. My body's going to absorb all of that stuff. The belt's not stretching very much. It's really your body absorbing the webbing into the thing. That's going to allow that much movement. Now, as I move forward, and then when I start to rebound, my body's going to lift up as much as it possibly can. So the lap belt's really critical to keep you down there. As my body lifts up, I'm going to be slammed back against the back of the seat, and then I'm going to kind of start to slide down. Now, submarining is when you're back, so I slam against the seat, and now I'm trying, submarining is going down underneath the seat. And so what the ASM does is it tries to, because you're with the 3-point belt, as you get that upper torso rotation, your body is not aligned, so it doesn't allow you to slide under the seat quite as much. With the ASM, it tries to follow that basic same geometry, giving the upper torso rotation so your body's out of line, they can't slide. If you just put a 4-point belt in the car that has no kind of an ASM stitch technology, you're going to be held equally. You're going to slam back, and then it's going to push you underneath the seat. So it's a really bad scenario that you need to be careful of. So there are some benefits to 4-point belts, and the driver is held much tighter in the seat. It allows them to focus more on their driving, reducing the submarining technology with the ASM. Reduce the likelihood of an injury from an airbag. Where do you get an injury from an airbag? You get an injury from an airbag as you're moving forward, and then the airbag is coming out, and you run into it. And you can get burns from the gases and everything else that come out. If you have a 4-point belt or a 5 or 6-point belt in a proper seat, you're going to be held further away from the airbag, so you're going to reduce the impact with the airbags. And so on, we'll move on. And then during rollover, if you have a 3-point belt, and I'll show you a video later, a 3-point belt is going to allow, because you're moving towards this way, you've got a belt coming across your shoulder, it's going to allow your arms, your heads, or something to get out. Most of the injuries in a rollover are not because the person is injured from the roof coming down. The injury is from bodily parts getting out the window. When the window's down, and you come over, a lot of times there's a head injury because your head or your helmet hits the pavement, or your head or helmet hits the armco as it's going over. And I find that with a 4-point belt, or even sometimes a 5-point belt, I'll wear it on a long trip because I don't slouch, and it keeps me more upright in the seat. So that works a little bit better. Some of the quick fit belts, one of the advantages of those, and again, a quick fit belt is not going to be used in your Porsche, but this would be for students or other instructor. If you're an instructor, they work with the factory pretensioner. A 3-point belt has a pretensioner. If it's a BMW, the pretensioner is in your lap belt on your right side. And what that pretensioner does, in the event of an impact, it senses the impact, it tightens down that lap belt by 2 inches. Okay, which is a great thing. Now, a lot of other cars have pretensioners up in the shoulder belt, so that tightens the belt this way. But since the quick fit belt clicks into the receptacle, it's going to actually tighten the belt, and it's going to work a little bit better. And these belts can be removed. Now, just to show you what it is, there's really 2 versions of a quick fit. There's a quick fit which is picture upper left here, and then there's a Quick Fit Pro. The difference between the two is the Quick Fit Pro has a cam lock, whereas the Quick Fit does not. The Quick Fit Pro can be used with frontal head restraint, and the reason is because you have the two shoulder belts coming down to meet a point. Okay, whereas the Quick Fit belt itself, there's a separation between the two shoulder belts of about 6 inches, which then on a Hans device, for example, it doesn't allow the belts to cover and ride totally over the legs of the Hans device. So that's kind of the difference, and I'll show you a little video in a second. We also have a 991 FMVSS 209 belt, which can work with the stock. Not the stock, but was it the racing seat? It's what's the optional seat, right? Mia? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Yep. So for that, yeah, it's an optional upgrade for that one.
Right. So this belt was designed specifically for that. It was built at the request of David Donahue at the Porsche driving experience, because they wanted a belt that they could use. They had all the proper seats. They just had to, but what we figured out is that Porsche eliminated all of the mounts for aftermarket belts. If you buy a GT4 or GT3 in Europe, you get a Schroth belt basically similar to this in the trunk with the car. And the chassis, the legal department in the US changed the floor chassis to eliminate the mounting points for the belts, which exist in all the European cars and are eliminated in the US cars. So therefore, we came up with this particular thing at David's request that they could use in the driving experience cars that will mount all to the stock points, where there's a roll bar mounting the shoulder belts through the proper seat to the harness. We have a new 2x2 belt, very similar to this for other cars that's coming on, but we're not going to go spend any time on that because it's really not appropriate for what we're doing. You will not want to have either a Rally 3 or Rally 4 or Rally Cross. Those are the older versions of Schroth. Those are not approved in any configuration for any cars for PCA. The Quick Fit and the Quick Fit Pro are very specific for individual cars. They actually have a tag, and I'll show you a picture of the tag in a couple of slides. On the belt, it says this belt was designed for BMW E46 or BMW E36 or E92 or Mustang or whatever. You want to make sure if you're getting into that car that you're getting into a car that's got a Quick Fit belt that is designed specifically for that car. Just some general installation with whether it's a Quick Fit belt should be in the stock seat, but if you're going to look at a belt in any seat, you don't want to have anything that looks like this. This is a integrated headrest seat. There's no pass-through. The belts are going around the outside of it. I've got a substrap coming around the front of the seat. This is like the absolute worst thing that can happen. What will happen is that no matter how tight, if you have an integrated headrest, there's no way that you can maintain the shoulder belts on your shoulder in an accident. Regardless if you have loops or something on either side of the headrest, there's no way. If you have loops on the side of the headrest holding the belts over your shoulder, and I come and see you in the paddock and you say, no, I'm good. I'll say, how good do you really think you are? I'm going to push you relatively hard to the left or to the right, and your shoulder is going to fall out of the belt. So there's no way that works. You've got to have the proper openings. And then the other thing is you've got to make sure, I've seen people that put race seats in cars, and then they have the 3-point belt or the racing belt or the 3-point belt, if they decide to use it, going over the top of the seat. Anytime in any belt, whether it's a 4-point, a 3-point, a 5-point, 6-point, it must allow you to have that lap belt pass through whatever opening or over the top, as you see pictured in this picture on the Cayman, where the belt is riding directly over your pelvis. Okay, it needs to have direct contact of your pelvis. If it's not capturing your pelvis, it's not going to keep you in the seat, and you're going to submarine right under it. This is an example of a label. This is the label on the particular Porsche belt. It says it's designed to be used with with the proper seat. It's not the full belt, but and what models that it's good for. So these all of the Schroth street legal belts are FMVSS 209, which basically means it's a self-certification. It's a DOT. It can be run in all 50 states, but it must have an orange push button. And then there are other standards you have to do, but it's a self-certification. So basically, all the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards are self-certification. So each manufacturer builds the car, the belt, the seat, the rollover, all the testing, they do it. Then the government may come in, or the Insurance Institute may come in, and they may verify those tests that you meet all those requirements. But it's always a self-certification. You don't have to submit the car in advance to do it. You have to do the testing and say, okay, we passed it. Common features of belts that we deal with for proper fitment. Basically, a 2-inch lap belt is in IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, pretty much anywhere. They're no longer. You won't see a 3-inch belt anymore. And why do you not see 3-inch belts anymore? It's because your pelvis, basically, the curvature at the iliac crest at the top, this distance here is roughly 2 inches. You want to get that lap belt to ride just below your iliac crest. And if you do that, you're going to get that lap belt 1.5 inches to 2 inches tighter, and it's going to be much more comfortable because it's riding on the pelvic bone in full, rather than a 3-inch belt, which is going to ride just over the crest. A 3-inch belt, because it's riding on the crest, you're going to get some bruising on the pelvic, on the iliac crest, and it's going to be more likely that belt could submarine over top of it. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different mounting hardwares, and we can get into some of that stuff a little bit later. The other thing, though, that's important with any belt is you need to make sure that you can adjust the belt length properly. Now, and you need to make sure that any adjuster on the lap belt is not impeded. So, for example, if you had a set of belts with a pull-up adjuster, and you had a race seat which had a hole where the belt's going through, and that adjuster is sitting just outside that that hole, what could happen is when it gets loaded, that adjuster catches on the outside of that opening, and that because it's a pull-up adjuster, to release it, it lifts it up, and then it just releases the belt. So you basically eliminate the belt. So if you've got a pull-up adjuster, it either needs to be 2 inches below the opening, or it needs to be inside the opening. So that's why you'll see a lot of the cars, especially Porsches, where things are tight, with our enduro belts, where both the adjusters are right at the center cam lock, because that eliminates all those issues, makes it easy for everybody to adjust. All of the webbing on our belts and on pretty much most reasonable quality belts nowadays are polyester. There are very few nylon belts anymore. Polyester webbing is less pervious to moisture, acid, sweat, and particularly UV. So your passenger car belts are all polyester webbing, as you know, and as some of you commented, and we'll address some of those questions later. They are, you can keep them in your passenger car for a long time, but we have to replace them after a certain time with racing belts, and we'll get into that. And then substraps are optional. Any of our Schroth belts that have a center cam lock, whether it's a push button cam lock or a rotary, also can be added, a substrap can be added to that if the appropriate routing can be done. This is just a little introduction on what a quick foot belt is. I know it's a couple of minutes, but it kind of gives you an idea so you know what it is. And I can get a drink of water in the meantime. That's our store in Mooresville. Hi, Joe Marko here again. Today I'm going to give you a little bit of a education on our Schroth quick fit restraints, which are used for street cars, ideal for track days. We have two different models. The one to my far right is the quick fit, the standard quick fit, and as you can see, it has the push button release in the center, very much like a standard passenger release. And the shoulder belts are sewn in to the left and the right of that. So there's a little bit of a separation between the shoulder belts. What makes the difference between the quick fit and the quick fit pro, which is the one here you see with the cam lock, is that the shoulder belts are sewn in much closer to the center of the cam lock, which then allows the Quick Fit Pro to be used properly with a frontal head restraint or a head and neck device, particularly with a Hans or a SHR Flex. It will work so that the shoulder belts will stay on the yoke or on the legs of the device properly while you're wearing it. Now, the basics of the Quick Fit system, a couple of things. First is that it's called a Quick Fit because it can be quickly installed or removed from the car. To install the device into the car, the only thing you have to actually physically install the first time is this one end piece, which is going to go either to the frame rail on the outside if it's on the driver's side, or to the seat if the belt is mounted to the seat. This will remain in the car. The rest of the belt will come out. In the back, which is at the rear lap belt, which we call the D&E points, you'll have one piece like this that will bolt in along with your stock seat belt, and all it will stick up will be this little piece. Those two connectors are what will allow the Quick Fit or the Quick Fit Pro belt to be installed in your car in moments. It's going to basically, the rear tail strap, when you want to install the belt, you're just going to click it onto the tail that's installed. The other end, on both the driver's side, on both the lap belt and the shoulder belt, are designed to be clicked into the factory female receptacles. Now that's a big plus because the factory points, so this belt is now mounted to all of the factory points without interfering in any way with your stock seat belt. That's the whole point of the belt. So you can install it into a car. It's not going to... I want to stop right there for a second. You don't really need to go through the whole thing, but the one point that I want to point out with this is the factory female receptacle. If you have a car with airbags, and if you use a belt and you don't click something into the female receptacle, the airbag has a two-stage system. I'm probably covering something I would do later, but that's okay. It has a two-stage system. And if you don't have anything in the female receptacle, the airbag is going to come out at a much stronger level because it's saying that you don't have your seatbelt on. So if you're sitting particularly close to the seat, if you're smaller and you sit close, that's going to potentially create, some kind of a minor injury, hopefully, only minor. The more you can get yourself away from it with a belt, if you are going to wear a 4, a 5 or 6 point belt, and you still have your airbags in the car and the 3-point belt in the car, I recommend that you either bring the 3-point belt around the back of the seat and clip it in, or get another clip that the proper one that you can click into the receptacle, so that you're already being held in the car. You don't need the airbag on top of it. The airbag and the thing are doing roughly a similar thing. And so if it's clicked in, your airbag is still going to go off, but it's just going to come off at a lower level of intensity.
Joe, we had one question back to when we were talking about Porsche removing the mounting point for the harnesses. Was that a DOT rule, or why they had to do that? It was just
a Porsche legal rule.
Legal, got it. Okay.
That's why the only cars that don't get a Schroth harness in the trunk are the cars that come to the U.S.
Yeah, figured. Okay.
This is a picture of what the seat testing looks like. So basically, when we do a Quick Fit belt, whether it's a BMW or whatever, we have to get the seat. We have to get all of the information about what seats and what models. Is it the same internal structure? Like in BMW, most of the seats are the same internal Recaro structure. The outsides are just finished differently. And what this test does is it measures how much deflection at a load. So we recline the seat at a 25-degree angle, and then we measure the H point, which is the point from where your hip goes to the top of the seat, and that should be at a 95 percentile male height. And then if it is, then we compress the seat, simulating 20G impact of the load on the top of the seat, and the seat cannot compress more than 25 millimeters. That means that the seat back is going to take the load as opposed to transferring the load to the spine.
Interesting.
Okay, so that's a test that we have to go through. When we certify a belt, we're also measuring we're also looking at several other things. We're pushing the seat all the way forward at a 25-degree incline, measuring the downward angle to the rear. It says D and E. That's an error. It should be D and E points, not C and D. I'll correct that. To the D and E points, the rear lap belt points. And we also have to push the seat all the way back and see if we're still at less than a 45 degree. If we are, then it's an approved installation. If we're not, then it's not. So normally you don't want a rear shoulder belt to be more than 20 degrees down from the shoulder, because a regular racing seat or without a harness bar, you're going to compress the spine. This, because we know what the seats are, we've tested, we've done all the geometry, we know that that's okay. So there's a whole process that we go through. It's about $5,000 to certify a car, which is why we don't have a lot of those done, because we have to have the seat, plus we have to go through and send the seat down to MGA, which is a test facility for OEMs for seats and all sorts of stuff. So there's a whole process that we go through to certify a Quick Fit or a Quick Fit Pro belt. We also did the 991 seat with the Nagaro, the 991 belt at the 45-degree angle. So that's not currently allowed in PCA for other cars, but it is something that we've done a certified test there, and they could look at that, maybe down the road. This is a Quick Fit belt or a 4-point belt with a 28G impact, but this is a stock seat. I think it's meaningful to see how much the seat, how much you move in the seat. Now this is 28 Gs, which is high, but not that high. You can see how much space there is between the back and the front. Now this is a perfectly tightened belt, and how much you move, how you go up. You slam back, your head slams into the headrest location. If you get into a car with a stock seat, you should be adjusting the headrest to make sure that your headrest is at the right height, so that if your head slams back against it, it's going to hit it in the center. So there's some things, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, that you should look at whenever you get into any car. But this was done to certify that we can use our Quick Fit Pro with a frontal head restraint. So there are a lot of different frontal head restraints that are out there. The one thing that I do want to point out is that there are no frontal head restraints that have been tested in a high-speed crash pulse with a 3-point belt. I've worked extensively with NASCAR, with John Melvin, with John Padillac, and Bob Hubbard, who invented the Hans device, and people who've been through many, many sled tests. And without an exception, they all make the statement that, so this particular device here is approved, or Simpson claims that it's good, it's going to give you a benefit in a 3-point belt. Okay, there is no data to support that. And the doctors and the experts dispute that and say they don't know that it's going to give you any benefit. They also don't know that it's any negative. It may not be, but there's no benefit. It's not going to give you additional protection. And it gives you something else that you've got to, it needs to be, if you're going to use it, it needs to be worn properly. The straps need to be properly adjusted. All those things, if they're not done properly, the benefit of it is very limited, if at all.
I'm sorry. So when you presented to my National HPDE committee, we had a long discussion about the hybrids and talked a lot about what you had said, that they weren't tested to show either that they were going to be, better for the 3 points or not better. And so we had a really long discussion about that. Where do you go forward from there?
Well, it'll work fine for a 4-point belt or 5-point or 6-point belt. So, it's not that it is a 38.1 device, which is fine. It's just, I think it's a misrepresentation to think that you're going to get additional benefit, if any, and not knowing any other things on whether to use it in a 3-point belt. You're going to spend a lot of money for something that is not likely going to do anything additional for you.
Right.
And so that's kind of the point. And that's, I mean, we don't, we do sell hybrid devices for like dirt track races and stuff like that. So we have every ability to sell it, but we won't sell it for that purpose because we don't believe it's a good investment or an improvement in safety. We're not out there just to make money if it's not the right thing to do. And so that's our opinion. I'm sure that if you talk to Simpson or if you talk to the number of engineers that are out there, they'll try to tell you that, we're full of crap, but we get told that many times over the last 30 years. But that's, from the experts that really have done a lot of sled testing, a lot of testing to a T, not one of them feels that it's an appropriate solution for a 3-point belt. Nobody's really come up with anything that's better than the basic 3-point belt. One thing that's really important is never, ever, ever, ever use a 3-point belt in conjunction with a 4-point belt or a 5-point belt or a 6-point belt. Because what happens is I've got the belts coming down here. Now I got another one coming this way. So now I've got this very nice triangle here where my neck is in the middle. Okay, it's a really just never, never, never do it. I mean, if you get into a car and it's not an approved PCA configuration and you use the 3-point belt, hopefully the car has airbags there, but never put the two of them together. I've seen people try to do that, and it's really, really, really dangerous. One of the problems with just general, frontal head restraints, and this is our Flex device, but we developed this device. It's a Hans similar device, but has this low collar. Now, with a Hans device, what I want to, you have an issue. If you get a Hans device, one of the problems is it may work great in your car, but you get into somebody else's car, it doesn't work because the angle in the back of it depends on the seat angle, your size, everything else. So there are different angles of a Hans device. If you have the wrong one, it could be pushing your head forward so you can't really stick your head back, or it's going to keep you from sitting back in the seat because it's digging into the back of the seat. This device, our Flex device, has a low collar which sits below the bottom edge of the helmet and in between there, but it has an articulating back so that in the event of an impact, it gives you that higher angle that you get out of a Hans device, but it doesn't give you the problem of the interference. So if you're looking for a device that's flexible between multiple cars and getting in and out of things with a proper belt, it's a good option, and I just want to throw that out there. Enough sales. Okay.
I had a question from the group, and it said, my understanding is that any belt that completely pins both shoulders should only be worn with a Hans device. So that is, by the way, the PCA minimum standard, is that if you have harnesses, you have to have a head and neck restraint system. As they don't allow your body to move enough in the event of an impact, you are likely to encounter a whiplash situation or worse, honestly, or worse. But you have fixed 4-point belts that don't work with a head and neck restraint. Why is that? And you and I talked a little bit about this beforehand. I mean, you have the one that won't hold you in. It just, the 6 inches apart aren't going to hold in those straps onto one of those head and neck restraint devices.
So most of the, it may actually work okay, but where the load, the peak load of the Hans device or any of the, the Hans device is the only one in our Flex which has a long, downward thing, whatever it is.
Yoke is what you called it before.
Well, the yoke, yeah. So, but the load is really at the top. So, like when you look at a hybrid device and you look at the next gen device, they only have a small thing at the top, and that's really where, as you're coming forward, that's where the majority of the load is. But we don't want with a Hans device or with a Flex device, if it's separated, then you don't really get the smooth load over the whole belt, which I think which gives you an advantage with a smooth load over the whole device, which is why we say that, and we're opting in the way of safety. I don't know that answered the question. I got sidetracked there.
I think it does.
Yeah, but so, I mean, all right, but a 4-point belt is not going to create more whiplash. It's not going to, the biggest injury from a whiplash happens is your head or your head restraint or your headrest is improperly positioned. You get whiplash because not from the forward direction, but from the back direction.
From the back. Mm.
So, if the headrest, if you get in the car and it has an adjustable headrest, the first thing you should be doing is turning around and looking that the headrest is adjusted at the proper height, which means that the center of the headrest should be at the center of the back of your helmet. That's the most important thing to prevent whiplash. You're not going to get more whiplash from a 4 or 5 or 6-point belt than you would get from the 3-point belt.
Good to know. And you were very adamant when we had our group together about instructors getting in that right-hand seat, with plenty of time to make sure that you can get all your straps where they need to be. And I'm little, so I've gotten out of cars where there's no way that those harnesses would work in my situation. And I've had to give up students because there was no way to make those adjustments. So, I think it puts the point forward as instructors, because we've got, 50 of you on the line right now, that you need to ensure that whatever the situation is, it's going to work with your units, your devices, and your body type with those seats. I mean, safety is the utmost important. And you got to ensure that all of those things are going to work with you and your body in those cars.
Yeah, when I'm instructing, I mean, especially if I'm getting a car with, I'm getting any car, if it's with aftermarket harnesses of any type, okay, I get in the car and I buckle myself up and I make sure that I have full ability to fully adjust my shoulders, to fully adjust my lap belt, to get everything absolutely tight. And if I can't, now the Schroth quick fit belts, if you run into those, there is an adjuster behind the seat on the rear tail strap that goes back that you can shorten and lengthen that rear tail strap, which then gives you more adjustment or less adjustment on your shoulder belts. So you need to get in the car, put the seat in the position you're going to be in, and see if everything works. If you have racing harnesses in the car and it's a car with proper seats and racing harnesses, you should be looking at the seat. Make sure that if it's a pull-up adjuster, that adjuster's not in the bad place that we talked about. Make sure that you can fully adjust the belt. If it's a pull down adjuster and you can't get it really tight, what you might try to do is take the tail strap, if it's long enough, put it through the hole of the opening of the seat and try to pull it up from the outside. Sometimes that will give you extra leverage to be able to get that lap belt adjuster tight. But you need to be able to make sure that the lap belt and the substrap and everything are working properly. If you go in any car with 4, 5, or 6-point belts and you pull your shoulder belts tight, if it lifts the lap belt up out of position, and the lap belt position should be tightened to the point that the top of the cam lock or latch or whatever is 1 inch below your belly button. If I have that now properly positioned and the belt's riding over my pelvis below the iliac crest, and now I pull the shoulder belts and it lifts it out of that position, it's all bad. You're going to submarine under the belt if you ride that way. If you've got that belt riding at or above your belly button, you will submarine under the belt. And then I know somebody has questions about, won't that correctly set crush my genitals in a crash? And the answer is, if your lap belt isn't tight and if the substrap is not tight, yes.
Yeah.
So really critical things. This is a rollover, and then I have this video because it shows really where the injuries come. The injury is not, you think about those boxes, which one is the things that are the problem? Watch his head and his arms. There's that instructor. I hate instructors that do that. So that's a 3-point belt, and his head is out the window. And that's typically a head or an arm or something. That's where the injuries come. That's 99% of the injuries and rollover accidents are things hitting out of the window. These are all, I have probably 30 pictures like this of people that have rolled over with Schroth belts in their car with Quick Fit or Quick Fit Pro belts or rally belts. And these are pictures, and these are that they send back, and they say, I rolled 4 times, and I did. And, we haven't, we have not had fatality or really serious injury in a car with it, with the exception of one where the car apparently went up and it just literally came down on its roof. 99% of the rollovers are A-pillar rollovers, meaning the car goes over and hits the A-pillar on either side, and that's where it is, and you can see how that goes. Seat backs are not designed to break. So whether you have a factory seat or a racing seat, the fact of whether has no effect on whether there's a roll bar in the car or not a roll bar in the car. If you have a factory seat, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard requires that in a rollover, that seat back must not break. So it doesn't, and it also requires you that a 3-point belt must keep you upright in the seat. So there's not a difference between the Federal Motor Vehicle Standard for a 3-point belt versus what we would have in a 4 or 5 or 6-point belt. You are a rollover at a lowest level is 10 Gs. And you are driving around the track at 1 G, maybe 2 if you got a really good Porsche. And you cannot control your body. At 10 Gs, if you think you're going to duck out of the way, it ain't going to happen. So, the myth, it's a myth, it's absolutely a myth that if you have to have a roll bar if you got a racing seat, or you have to have a roll bar if you're going to wear a 4 or 5-point harness, because otherwise you're going to get crushed. That's less than a 1 percentile, far less than a 1 percentile accident of a rollover accident. When you're looking at things to improve safety in your cars, obviously a 4-point plus harness belt, containment seats. I'll run the video while I'm talking. It takes a while to get there, so I'll jump it up a little bit here.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, so
I don't know why you have a big smile on your face, Joe, but go ahead.
so the thing that's important here is that this is a car with basically 3-point belts. You saw the helmets coming together in the rollover. You saw the guy on the right, his helmet got outside the car. Having proper belts, having a containment seat of some sort, or if you don't want to do a containment seat, what we call interior nets. So IMSA requires on both sides of the seat a net. It's a triangular net that comes forward, and what that does is it keeps you contained within that area. Okay, it's a great way. It's a very inexpensive way to, instead of a containment seat, which we can never put in a Porsche because we don't have room to get out. It's a good way to solve that problem. A frontal head restraint will help keep things a little bit better. There are different levels of helmets. Most of the helmets that we all run are Schnell, 2020, 2025. There's a higher level standard, which is also, I believe, approved in your rule book. If not, it should be. An FIA 8860 helmet. An 8860 helmet is basically what F1 uses. A Schnell helmet is dropped from 3 meters on certain types of device, on certain types of forms, and there's the intrusion, there's outer shell intrusion protection, and then there's concussive protection. The 8860 helmet gets dropped from 5 meters and has to have the same level of protection. So it's a factor, multiplication factor. So it's a much higher level of concussive protection and intrusion protection. So that's something, and there are now 8860 helmets you can start to get. Stila, which we don't sell, has a few that are like $2,700, $2,800. An F1 helmet or a NASCAR 8860 helmet we sell is like $5,900. So they can go in a wide range, but they do, any helmet that meets that standard is going to give you much more of concussive protection. If you've had a concussion before and you decide you want to do driving events and you need to be a little there, you might look into an 8860 helmet. So let's talk a little bit about, well, let me see here. There were a couple of things. So I think we addressed the crotch. There's a question on the crotch belt. We addressed that. There's a question that says, which safer, a factory 3-point belt with airbags or harness with a frontal head restraint and airbags still in place? So the airbags will do very similar to what a frontal head restraint will do. The frontal head restraint doesn't have you riding into something that's putting off a gas, and if you're sitting close, it's going to impact you as much. But they're designed to do basically the same thing. It's to prevent a basal skull fracture, to prevent a neck extension. Is one safer? A proper seat with proper belts and everything. Yes, I think a head and neck restraint with a absolutely properly installed helmet is going to be better. I went through a 2021 M3 with 3-point belt, and every single airbag came off when we hit 2 Armcos at 90 miles an hour at BIR, and my back was sore for a while, but I had my visor down, and we'll talk about that in a second. The 3-point, the airbags did their job. I didn't know that there were so many airbags in the car. I think there were probably 40 airbags. I don't know, it was crazy. I had to crawl out underneath them. So lap belt, we talked about just harness belt basics now. And at the end of the video, there's 2 QR codes. One, which is a little 3-point thing that we put out with every belt that's just standard of installing a belt in your car and things to be concerned with. And then there's a 60-page detailed one, which you can get a QR code that's Schroth's detailed belt installation thing, everything you might ever possibly want to know and more. It's done in true Germanic style. The lap belt's 1 inch below the belly button to the top of the cam lock. The lap belt mount should always pivot. So you should never have a lap belt that is fixed in a position. So as your body moves, you want that lap belt to be moving with you. The quick fit belt is bolted in place, but it has a very small loop, and the way the belt's sewn is it allows the belt to rotate in that loop. There should be a direct load path from all of the mounting points to the cam lock. You don't ever want to have your lap belt riding on the outside of the seat to behind the seat, going around all of the hardware and the seat mechanism and everything else. The other thing is look underneath the lap belt and make sure that the lap belts are not riding against a bolt in the seat mount, or they're not riding against an edge of the seat mount that's kind of interfering in the hole or anything like that. And then the most important thing with a lap belt is that it should be as tight as you possibly can get it. And if you have it riding properly over the pelvis, you will be able to get it extremely tight and without it being too uncomfortable. And make sure that that the crotch belts, the sub straps that you're using, they should be setting the position of the lap belt. So they should be tight enough so that they set the position so that the lap belt cannot raise up out of the position when the shoulder belts are tightened. Any car you get into, the shoulder belts pull up bad. Shoulder belt needs to have a pass-through or a clear path, whether it's through the holes or if it's in the quick fit belt, it goes between the 2 headrest posts. So if you get into a belt, a BMW or something, and there's 2 headrest posts, and they have the quick fit belt to the outside, that's a no-no. It has to go through the center of the post. And the downward angle, if you get a belt, if it's a quick fit with the name as it's required for Porsche rules, it's going to say that car, and you know that angles are okay. There should never be, when you have a belt in your car, if you have a racing seat, you never want to have the belt come off your shoulder. And then if the hole happens to be up here and then go up, okay? Because now what happens, there's nothing holding you down the seat. You have a rollover accident, you're just going to raise up that distance, even if your lap belt is as tight as possible. If it goes down and then through a hole, so if the hole is down here, if it comes down and over there, now what I've done is I've created a huge spinal compression load. So you need to make sure that the belt coming off the top of your shoulder or off the top of the frontal head restraint, it's going over your shoulder, straight back, not up, and no more than 20 degrees down to the harness bar, unless it's a special insulation of some sort. Okay, but never go over the seat and go all the way down to the floor like I've seen people do that.
So for somebody like me, you know, I sometimes have to sit on cushions. So I either give up the submarine, you know, the height of the submarine, or I give up the shoulders. Unless they make, you know, midget seats for me, you know, on the right hand seat.
You should carry around a couple of pads, like 1-inch pads that are out of high density 45.2 sheet foam that you can stick underneath the cushion or on top of the cushion and sit on that. You never want to have anything that's compressible, because if you have something compressible, then your lap belt is going to be loose when you have an impact. So you can get that. You can cover it with some, you know, we have fabric, Nomex fabric or something. You can do it, and you can just sit on that. The other good thing about that is if you do have an impact, or you know, and you slam down on it, it's going to absorb that energy. You want to be careful with that.
Yeah.
So just what the note that we talked about, this is the airbag thing I mentioned. So when several years ago, SCCA came out with a big thing, and there was a big controversy of airbags and visors and helmets and blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, you can't go in a car with a helmet with an airbag. Okay. So we commissioned tests at I think it was Takata's website or Takata's sled test. I forgot where we did it at this point. And what we did is we tested helmets with visors up, with visors down, with no visor. We tested open face helmets with sunshades, and basically with no visor, it works great. With a visor down and locked, it works great. With a visor that is up, you know, it's if you have a visor slightly opened and that airbag comes up and you're coming into it, it could take the visor and push your head back. Okay, because the airbag is coming up and it's going to grab it. If you have a open face helmet with a sun visor, okay, or a visor, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to catch that and it's going to snap your head back with the thing. So that's, you know, because the airbag is not designed to have something other than your head there. It's not, there's not something, so the visor, so I always recommend, if you have a visor, you should have a visor, first of all, and it should be down and it should be locked whenever you're driving on the track. I've seen multiple incidents. One was really interesting. We had one of our instructors with an E30 M3 went off at VIR and side slammed into the tires. It took his right mirror and it shot it through the windows across both of their visors.
Wow.
So if their visors were not down, it would have been a real problem.
Yeah.
A lot of the helmets you can get now have, like the Stilo helmets and Schubert helmets, for example, have a 2-stage visor that will give you a first lock and a second lock. The first lock will give you a little bit of air underneath. So there's some benefits to do it, but never go out on the track with a visor in this partially open position, because that's a really dangerous situation.
So we are at 9:56.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we're pretty much at the end. There is the TrackCom program, which some of you have probably already been identified. It goes through, I think, June 15th. But there's tremendous improvement in the TrackCom 4. We kind of, we appreciate all of you that bought the 1, 2, 2.5. We're sorry for the ones that bought the 3. I hope we've taken care of most of you. The 4 solves all those problems, so that's good. All your accessories from day one work. Please keep your receipts. They are all of the TrackCom, Racecom parts are warranted for 2 years. So if a student manages to pull out the cable on your boom, it's warranted. It's Gorilla glued in there like you won't believe. So we don't there. So that's there. We also have the chaser. We talked about this a little bit. You had a comment there?
Well, I was going to say I was surprised when we had our discussion that the 9-volt battery in the TrackCom 4 isn't supposed to be kept in there. And I know that I had spoken to somebody where I was just out in, Minnesota, and they got one, and it has now you're including materials when you're shipping them out saying don't keep it in there. So can you talk about that for 1 second?
Yeah, so basically the brilliant thing we try to do with TrackCom 4 is to be able to have the 2 battery options. And the way we thought it would work is it would take the lithium battery first, and then it would go to the 9-volt. Well, it never, I guess the software or the way the programming worked didn't quite work that way. So what happens is the lithium battery will probably last most of the weekend. I don't know if that's your experience with it.
Yes, great battery.
Right, and the 9-volt battery, you just keep it in your thing. In the event that you run out of charge and you have nowhere to do it and you're gonna hop in the car the next minute, then you can throw in the 9-volt battery. It might last a half hour or an hour, but not much more than that. It's really designed not, it's not something to be left in there all the time. So it's better just to leave it out, charge it up, and use that just as your emergency situation.
Yes, thank you.
The chaser is something that is really kind of cool. We developed it during COVID because we couldn't do in-car instruction. And it's basically, there comes with 2 units. You connect it to a phone. You can have as many chasers or up to 5, I think, is what you can do with a phone call. You initiate a phone call, and now you have all of the TrackCom accessories, the booms and everything else that you can have freeway. You can have conversation between the 2 for lead follow. Lead follow I found with A and B students where I'm less likely and less willing to get in the cars. I could get on the track with them, and with this, it's a great teaching experience because I can communicate with them the whole time. I can say, okay, I'm going to show you what I would like you to do through this corner. Then you can have them go by, or say, hey, let's let the group behind us go by. And you can do a lot of instruction with the student, either following them or letting them follow you, or you can set them on the track. You can go up in the corner and you can be watching them and you can tell them, feedback then. So it's a great way, another tool that you can put in your thing for communication with your student. It works exceedingly well. Most tracks now have reasonably good cell service, so it's not a big deal. It works extremely well. Plus, if you have a Catalyst or a Catalyst 2, you can use this as the Bluetooth to feed into your comms that you have, your Racecom comms from the Garmin. So you don't have to have a cable that goes from the Garmin, to your helmet. So there's some nice, some other benefits from that. And then this last thing, it's basically the same thing with the chaser, but it can work with a push to talk and a thing that you can use in a group. So like for an A+ group, if you wanted to do a program, all of them could have, it was developed really for the Spec E46 racers who all go out at the same time. And they create a Discord conversation, and then they give each other grief the whole race.
I was going to say, is that for smack talking?
Right. They smack talk, and then their wives and whoever can sit back at home and listen.
Or their husbands, by the way.
Going on. So it's a very cool thing. We do have a couple of BMW clubs that are using it for like their A+ advanced group, because you can take the whole group out. and you can communicate with them the whole time. Hey, all right, we're going to try this exercise now. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's a really kind of a cool thing. I always close with this thing, and then we can, if there are any, I think we still have 10 minutes for questions if we want, or 9 minutes. But this is. And now we go backwards. Right. So that's kind of why it's important to have good safety equipment.
All right.
These are additional resources. So basically, if you click the QR code there, you can get our threefold brochure, which is basically all the really detailed things on how your belts and what angles need to be there, and how to properly make sure your belts are properly installed and adjusted. And then if you want really detailed installation instructions, the one on the right is the Schroth long version of everything, but we've details all the proper wrappings of belts and whatever orientation they might be.
Good.
And then that's the program that you guys had. You've already got an email on that.
So let's see. Did we have any more questions that were? I did pop a couple of them to you in advance.
Okay, the expiration date. Oh my God.
Hmm.
So, yes, if your car sits in the garage and there are the harnesses degraded in, as somebody said, no more than 5 years. Well, an FIA harness, when you buy it, if you buy it in January, it's good for that entire year plus 5 years. So basically, if you buy a belt in January, it's good for 6 years. So you can amortize it over 6 years instead of 5 years. The reason is that in racing, we can't say that, if you build a belt to a standard, you can't say that, well, if you're only using it on weekends, then you get 10 years. But if you're using it every weekend, then you get 5 years. You can't do that. It's just, it's not a doable thing. None of the belts are certification because there's no way companies have the ability to x-ray hardware and look at all that or see how it's been done. So FIA never doesn't allow it. SFI did allow it, but they don't allow it for the 16.5 and 16.6 and 16.7 belts. Why does SFI have 2 years, and which is actually 2.5 years if you buy one just when it comes out? And why is FIA 5 years, actually 6 years? It's because of the types of racing that they do. The majority of SFI clients are, we have 100,000 racers in the US, of which probably 70,000 are dirt track racers, and their belts are junk after 6 months or a year. And certainly at 2 years, they're in rough shape. There's no way to say, well, depending on how you use it, it's there. And then, yes, it does come down to liability. If a club or an organization becomes a member of SFI and they specify an SFI spec, which is really great, then SFI will enjoin them should there be a legal case and help to defend, to say, okay, we have this spec, this is what it meets, this is an industry standard, and as long as you follow the rules for what the certification is, then SFI will enjoin your legal team and protect you against any kind of a claim. If in fact you say, no, our cars are always inside, we're going to allow it for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Well, now a good lawyer is going to take that. SFI is going to say, hey, it was overturned, we're not involved. A good lawyer is going to say, Okay, Porsche Club, what expertise and what proof do you have to say that this belt was safe? My client was severely injured because of whatever, okay, but you said it was going to be safe. And so you show me the proof and the data where it's okay to exceed that thing, and you're going to lose every single time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but it is. You know, I mean, you spend a lot of money on tires, you spend a lot of money on brake pads, you make an investment in the safety equipment that's you know, amortized over 2.5 or 6 years. Be a smart buyer when you're buying the belt. You know, so like if you're buying a Schroth belt now, make sure that you're buying a Schroth belt. Ideally, you'll buy it from HMS, but whoever you buy it from, it still comes from us. Make sure you're buying it with the latest expiration date. So right now, all of our belts, I think, are 30 or 30. I forget if it's 30 or 31. I should know. I'm retired now. I don't have to know these things. But make sure it's the latest year, because there are obviously ones that are still out there that, you know, maybe somebody had it sitting on the shelf. So you'd lose a year if you do it. If you're buying an SFI belt, as a manufacturer, and we manufacture SFI belts as well, we can put there's now a date of either June or December. Okay, so a belt that's dated June, we can start selling that to our dealers in April. So we get them in March, we get the tags, we can start selling on. So make sure that when you get the belt, that the belt is not already 6 months or a year old, because then, you know, you're just, you know, you're doing it. And depending on where you buy it, you know, you need to be smart enough to know what that is.
That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. I had a question just from somebody. Where do we get the code? Can you put that screen back on from, I think it was the one right before. One more, the other way. There you go. So that's for PCA national instructors. So you have to have a PCA national instructor number to receive this benefit. But you can take that QR code snap right now on your screen while it's still up there.
It's only done through the website.
Yeah, it has up there the instructions that you have to scan the code first and then put the item in the cart, and then it gives you an area where you have to type in your PCA national instructor number and enter that as the order note at the bottom of the cart. Perfect. Joe, it was a great pleasure. I don't see any more questions that have popped in.
Did I mention the Walero, the shirts and stuff? That might be something of interest.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So, one thing that we have a product called Walero, which we've had a lot of instructors picking it up. You know, if you're wearing just a cotton t-shirt, well, you should be wearing a cotton t-shirt and not a polyester shirt, first of all, or polyester pants, because polyester, if you do get into a fire, the cotton will burn, but the polyester will melt to you, and then they'll be peeling it off. What I recommend, and what I've been doing, and what a lot of people up in this area have been doing, is we have a product called Walero, which is temperature regulating. It uses Outlast, which you can buy sheets and all sorts of stuff with Outlast, which helps to control and keep a common core temperature. I'm able to wear it in a 95-degree day at VIR and not die. What it does, though, it does have some properties that it will reduce the loss of fluids by about 40%. It'll reduce your average heart rate by about 8 beats per minute, because what it does is it helps to keep a more common core temperature. So it's something that, you know, even if you just get a shirt to wear it when you're on the track, you're going to have some fire protection. You'll find that you're going to have you'll be a lot more comfortable in the car driving around, and it's not going to be that much hotter while you're there. And I know a lot of instructors have tried it. It's extremely comfortable. It's not like Nomex and Carbonex. It's not itchy. I have 6 shirts in my downstairs, which I wear through the winter and cold days, or if I'm going somewhere where I know it's going to be nasty. It's great if you go skiing or if you're doing any kind of hiking. We have one of our guys used to hike Mount Washington. The first time he wore it, he got up to the top of the mountain in the winter. Normally he's sweating and then he freezes. He said it was amazing. Yeah. It's very effective.
Yep, it's a great product. Alrighty then. Joe, thank you. It's always a pleasure. So good to see you. And Laura, are you going to say anything before we hang up? This will be recorded, by the way, and we'll post it back up on the PCA HPDE YouTube channel. But thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and we hope that you learned something new and to be extra safe out there. And there's a lot of products out there, but it's really important that you take the initiative to ensure that you in the right-hand seat are the ones that are taking control of your safety. I thought the video for the airbags going into the visor, you know, I see people going out all the time with the visor cracked open after I saw that video. I mean, I usually have it open a little teeny bit, but now I've got my Stilo lock on. You know, great testing that you all do really to make us safe. So thank you, Joe, for all of that. Yep. And Laura, I think we're good to go.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.